Namaste. Today we are going to start the new book, Bhaja Govindam, written by Shankara Acharya. But before we do that, let's do our daily prayers. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhu Bhuva Swaha, Tatsavitra Varenayam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Asto Ma Satgamya, Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya, Mrityorma Amritam Gamya. Om Sehna Bhavatu, Sehna Bhunaktu, Saviryam Karvavahi, Tejasvi Navadhitamastu, Ma Vidvishavahi. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om. So I'm sure some of you have studied this scripture, but these kind of scriptures we like to study again and again. Okay? They call this scripture very small, 31 verses only. It's called a Moha Mudgara. That's another name for it. I don't know whether you know it or not. Moha Mudgara. And what does Mudgar mean? Moha means we all know delusion. And Mudgar means, like a hammer or a mallet is called a Mudgar. So these 31 verses are like a hammer to destroy the Moha, the delusion, illusion, Maya. Moha Mudgar. So that's why a lot of people, they just like to recite it every day and see what they can get out of it so that they can destroy this illusion, which is keeping us under the spell of Maya. Okay. So it's written by Shankara Acharya. Most of the historians, they agree that he lived in the 8th century CE, or about 1200 years ago, 1300 years after Buddha. And it's a 788 to 820 CE. He was on this earth only for 32 years. But what an influential Indian philosopher. What a religious teacher. In those 32 years alone, he accomplished so much, which many people can't even do together in hundreds of years. He has been called the India's greatest philosopher, and his influence on Indian thought, religion, and culture has been greatly significant. He was born to elderly Brahmin parents. They didn't have any child. Father's name Shiv Guru and mother Aryamba. From the village of Kaladi in Kerala. They prayed to Lord Shiva. They wanted to have a son. Kept worshipping him. Lord Shiva rewarded them by incarnating himself. So that's why it's called Shankara Acharya is a Anshavatar of Shivji. And they named him Shankar. He was very young when his father passed on. His mother raised him. Highly intelligent, even at the age of 8, he requests his mother to renounce this world. He wanted to be an ascetic. His mother refused because that is a tradition. You got to have the permission from the parents, especially at a very young age. And the story goes that he was later bathing in the river when a crocodile bit his leg. Realizing that he was on the verge of death, he asked his mother's permission again. He says, I want to renounce this world, so I would die as an ascetic. At that time, mother agreed. Fortunately, he was saved from that grip of the crocodile. No harm to him, but he began his life as an ascetic. He became the disciple of a great guru whose name was Govind. Govind himself was a disciple of a famous Vedantic scholar, Gautpada. Some of you might have heard the name Gautpada. He has written some commentaries, especially on the Mandukya Upanishad. After receiving his training, he first traveled to Varanasi, then all around India, teaching people, especially the people in the villages, because he found the people in the cities, they were just too intoxicated with wealth. But he traveled from village to village. He wrote many commentaries on scriptures and completed his work during his 16th year of life. So all the writings were done by the time he was 16. So then the rest of the 16 years of his life, he traveled all over India. He established 4 mutts: north, south, east, and west. You're all familiar with these mutts, because right now also there are Shankara Acharya's over there. There are Vedic mantras being recited 24/7. In the east, in the Odisha, Govardhan Mutt, it's called Puri also. Rig Ved is being recited there. In the Karnataka, south, Sharda Pitham, Yajurved. In Gujarat, on the west side of India, Dwarka Pith, Samved. And in the north, Uttaranchal, Jyotirmat, Atharvaved. So all 4 directions, he established those mutts. He died. Nobody really saw him dying, but he just walked towards the Himalayas, towards Kedarnath. That's where he was seen at the end, at the age of 32. He finished what he came here to do. He was a champion of Hinduism, a vigorous missionary in India. India or Aryavrat at that time needed a missionary like that. Because Hinduism or the Vedic philosophy had been almost smothered within the enticing entanglement of the Buddhistic philosophy. And Hindu society, denominations, different viewpoints, they just mutually kept fighting, quarreling with each other, endless argumentations. So they needed a leader like that, who can be a champion. Because each Pandit, they had their own followers, own philosophy, own interpretations. And there was always a very powerful opponent of these philosophers. So there was a intellectual disintegration between all those scholars. And Shankaracharya ji brought the peace among them also. So it was such a chaotic intellectual atmosphere. That's why Shankaracharya ji, he gave his life-giving philosophy of this non-dual Brahma of the Upanishads. So he has written the commentary on the Brahma Sutras also, but on all the main Upanishads, he have written the commentary. Commentary on Bhagavad Gita also. We study Vivek Chudamani written by him. So those are all big scriptures, but we are going to study this very small book written by him, Bhaja Govindam. Of course, the Sanskrit was the language. He has written, most of his writings are in poetry, but he has written some prose also. They say that Sanskrit language was almost like a plastic for him. He could mold into anything. That's the kind of a writer he was. He is considered the sole guardian angel of the Rishi culture. An exquisite thinker with a brilliant intellect, personality which had the vision of the truth, a heart which was full of faith and desire to serve the nation. And very sweetly, emotionally, relentlessly logical also. So if you ever get a chance to read his commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita, do read that. Because you all have studied Bhagavad Gita. So when you see Adi Shankaracharya's commentary, you will see what he is saying about it. So within the span of about 27 effective years, so out of 32, you can see that first few years, a childhood, a babyhood. So 27 effective years, he finished his work. And he folded his manifestation and left. He was a great organizer, far-sighted diplomat, courageous hero. So no matter how much we talk about him, it's not enough. And a tireless servant of the Vedic culture. I mean, you can imagine a person in those years, what could be the condition of the roads? And he had to walk all over India. Okay. So you need the courage, you need the faith, you need the love. And that's what he did. So selfless, unassuming, this mighty angel, he strode up down the length and the breadth of the country. Bhaja Govindam is one of the smaller book he has written. But here the fundamental of the Vedanta are taught in very simple and musical verses. A little child can, who knows little Sanskrit, can recite it. In fact, in the past, in most of the ashrams, they used to just sing this, either first verse or all 31 verses, or you can mix and match also, doesn't matter. You will see that the beauty of these verses. But first we got to learn, we got to sincerely look at it, what these verses really mean. There's a popular story which describes the circumstances in which this great poem broke out from the heart of this teacher. It is said that once in Banaras, Shankara Acharya ji was going along with 14 of his disciples. And he overheard an old Pandit repeating to himself the grammar rules. He was making a lot of effort in memorizing and reciting those grammar rules. And it was just a mere intellectual accomplishment. And Shankaracharya ji thought that he's just wasting his time or wasting his life without realizing the spiritual unfoldment in him. Because purpose of life is to know ourselves. So they say that that's how, when he listened to that old man just repeating the grammar, the famous first verse came out of his mouth. Bhaja Govindam. Which really means the grammar rules will never help anyone at the time of death. While living, strive to realize the deathless state of purity and perfection. This is what he said. So then after that, this first verse became almost like a chorus to be chanted to emphasize this point. Immediately following this first verse, he just recited 11 more verses. Or 12 more verses actually. So that's why the following 12 verses are called Dvadash Manjrika Stotram. Altogether there are 31 verses. So first one, then following 12 are called Dvadash Manjrika Stotram. Manjrika. Manjrika really means a bouquet of flowers. And whatever came out of his mouth must be so contagious. So his words inspired his followers also. And all those 14 followers, each one of them created and recited one verse. So together they stand today under the title of Chaturdash Manjrika Stotram. So Dvadash, like a 12 by him, and then Chaturdash Manjrika by the disciples. So you can see that one bouquet, then the second bouquet of these verses. And then after listening to all the verses, in the end, Shankaracharya ji is blessing all those true seekers, his followers also, and disciples like us also right now who are on the path of spirituality in the last 4 verses. So this is how we will study this. The first verse, then 2nd to 13 verse, then 14 to 27 verses, then 28 to 31 verses. These are the groupings. That's how it goes. Okay, so the first one, then Dvadash, Chaturdash, then 4 verses. Stotra. What does stotra mean? See, there are writings in our scriptures. There are mantra also. There are shloks also. There are sutras also. Then there's stotra also. So these are called stotra because they are devotional song. See, sutras are always instructional. We just finished a book last week, Narad Bhakti Sutras, instructions. Stotra is a devotional. It's almost like a prayer verses. You can keep on singing. See, just like when we do the arti, we sing that arti. Devotion arises. But in all these verses, you will see a very scientific precision. This very precisely will dissect the shell of thoughtlessness that veils the real light. Because normally we just stay veiled. This is called a avarna. But when we apply a proper thought, you can pierce through that veil, through that avarna. So these verses help us. That's why they're called Mudgara also, to break down that shell of ignorance on us. Some people call this a book of prakriya. That means a book of categories. And you will also see that if we study it properly, it diagnoses the reason for our unhappiness. Even though our real nature is happiness, our real nature is bliss and joy, but why do we stay unhappy? So all you can say is it's a deeper diagnosis of human unhappiness, this book. So it's not only indicates to the students or the sadhaks the goal and the path, but also reveals the wretchedness of our present day life. Horrors of our present lifetime. He continues telling us that ego and the desire, they are the enemies. Work on those. Unhappiness is because of that. There is no argumentation in this particular scripture, no dialects in these stanzas. So that means there's no vad, no disputations. This is a textbook of advice, upadesh. Because there are some scriptures where you see some argumentation or some dialogue. No, there's no dialogue. All these verses are addressed to seekers as a book of instruction to help them walk the path straight to their goal. It contains ideas that can refresh us on this path. So that means the goal we know, walking we must do. So this will help us to inspire to keep on walking on this path. So that's why just when you study this, don't think that only the Shankara Acharya is saying, but even the followers are just talking to us in the same kind of a language. They are also inspiring us. Because they got inspired in the company of great Guru. We say, teacher is teaching the disciples. Disciple, the word for disciple is called shishya. Shishya. Okay. And who is a shishya? Shikshate iti shishyaha. One who is taught by the teacher. So when you study this, just think that you are a student, you are a disciple. Only then this will make a difference. Okay. So it's a great teacher is teaching us. Only then we will become ready to really not only walk, maybe the fly. And what is he teaching? He's really teaching from the scriptures. Sure, the language little bit is different over here, but whatever he is teaching, it's no different than Bhagavad Gita or Vivek Chudamani or other great scriptures or the Upanishads. That's why they say, Shishyat vishishyate shastradi parigyanen bahirmukha upekshe iti shishya. So he is teaching us to become less extroverted. Don't be bahirmukh. Because in the past we have been bahirmukh. We've been looking outside. He is telling us, study this. With the help of this scripture, you will become antarmukhi, not bahirmukhi. Go within yourself. So remember that also. Because what really goes outside? Mind does, but mind with the help of what? The senses. Indriyadi pravritim shikshyati iti shishya. So true disciple is one who is taught by the teacher, and as a result of understanding, he become more and more introvert, what he was before, and independently curb and control all the senses. It's not only in front of our Guru. Other times also we got to see, are my senses in my control? Or am I controlled by my senses? Such disciples were the audience to whom Bhaja Govindam is addressed. So we got to be these kind of disciples. Okay. So first he was teaching those 14. In his company, they became flowers, or flowers came out of their mouth. And now if we follow this, this will happen to us also. So these 31 verses, they definitely have a very, they call it a crack whip style. It's very direct. It's not much softness in it, even though it's very musical, but still, and the message is very stern over there. No delicate consideration in the approach to correct the erring person, a person who's making mistakes. It's almost like when we were growing up, if we made a mistake, our parents did not mind twisting our ear. So that kind of a style we see. It's almost like when a house is on fire, no formalities are needed. You can just break down the bedroom door or the bathroom door to get the person out. That's the kind of a style he's using. It's an emergency style. Urgency of the moment demands that they must be awakened immediately. Okay? No, please, maybe, later. No, not like that. Okay? So this is for the welfare of the beloved disciples. So he loves us. That's why he has created this for us. Because we are still sleeping. House is on fire and we are sleeping. So he wants to wake us up. Okay? So with that introduction, let's start the first verse. Bhaj Govindam, Govindam Bhaj Mood Mate, Samprapte Sanihite Kale, Nahi Rakshati, do grin karne. Bhaj means seek. Govind, you know the name Govind. Some people say that he is talking about his guru, and he's talking about God. But eventually, God and Guru, there's no difference. Okay. Mood mate, oh fool. Samprapte, when comes. Sanihate, appointed. कहते हैं ना निहित time, सन्निहित. काले time. Over here, this time means a death. Kal. Nahi, surely, never. Again, nahi, surely, never. Rakshati saves. Do grin karne. Grammar rules. Okay. Seek Govind, seek Govind, seek Govind. Oh fool. See, that's why he said very direct message. He doesn't mind calling us fool. Because if we are not seeking the ultimate goal, we are fool. We are wasting our life. So he says, oh fool, when the appointed time comes, the death, grammar rules surely will not save you. So as I was saying earlier, that opening verse is considered as a chorus. Generally, people, when they are singing this Bhaja Govindam, this is repeated at the end of every verse, and people sing it together. So Bhaja Govindam is a chant. And generally, you will see that it's a singing in the congregations. And that's what we're going to do this time too. We have a great singer here. She's going to be singing every day, every time, every Tuesday for us. And then you try to sing it with her also. Okay, we are not Sanskrit scholars, but we can learn to. This is very simple Sanskrit, not that difficult. Okay, so every week we will try to learn how to sing at least one verse, at least this one, which is supposed to be repeated every time. Okay. The grammar rules that has been indicated here stands for all secular knowledge and possessions. So sure, the literal meaning is grammatically formula, do grin karne, because this is like if you look at Panini's dictionary, so do grin is a grammar, but if you look at the broader meaning, it means anything what we do outside. All the secular knowledge, all the time we waste to possess this, to have this, to hold this, to collect this, to run after this. So the import of this condemnation that all grammars or secular sciences cannot save us. When death reaches, because death is sure, we all know that. We are here on this earth temporarily. And he is reminding us. He's taking our mind to that surely it will come. And all these possessions over here, all the achievements in this secular world is not going to help you. In Chandogya Upanishad, Narad approaches his older brother, Sanat Kumar, humbly. He's begging for initiation from his older brother into the great knowledge. And his older brother asks him, tell me all that you already know, so that I may instruct you in what you do not know. Naraji gives an endless list of sciences that he already mastered. Astrology, astronomy, literature, art, music, dance, various sciences, etc. Then Sanat Kumarji says, these are all mere names. The infinite, the word in that Upanishad for the infinite is used Bhuma. He said Bhuma is to be realized. All these secular sciences are just the means to attain that. It's interesting to note that in the list of Narad's accomplishments, Grammar was also included there too. So that's why Shankaracharya is using the word grammar over here. Grammar, the knowledge of grammar is definitely it's necessary. We cannot speak any language correctly without grammar. We cannot read anything. But this is again a means, not the end. That's what Shankaracharya is saying. So we got to understand the right message from the scriptures, advice of the teacher, that grammar is useful, but don't make it as a goal. Don't waste your precious lifetime. So grammar over here also means, just like I said, this grammar means secular knowledge. This is needed. How to pay your bills, how to talk to people, how to behave in certain occasions. Sure, those are all needed, but those are all temporary. If we just waste all our life on that, then sure, time will come and death time will come. They're not going to save us. Even the greatest of the sciences. Because when death comes to erase us from here or take us from here, what use is any science to us? What use is the charm of all the arts we have mastered? And what use is the knowledge of grammar? That's what he's saying. Okay. While living here, we need to understand and master the secret of life. We need to think about it. The reality behind this existence over here. We got to gain our perfect identification with the Supreme. But first we have to know who we are. That's what we need to work on. So that's why he says, wake up. Because death will come. If we have done what we are supposed to do while we are here, then there's no fear. Otherwise, the mind will be fearful. Mind will be attached. And then we'll just continue this journey with those kind of emotions. Because our real nature is peaceful. Our real nature is divine. Because in Bhagavad Gita also, Lord Krishna does tell us that one who leaves the mortal coil, remembering me, he is saved. This is chapter 8, verse number 5. Antkale cha mameva smaran muktaha kalevaram. He says that antkale cha. So it's not just a book knowledge alone. The law of the Lord is clearly telling us that antakale cha. Cha is a very significant word in this verse. Cha stands for actually all of life through and at the time of departing. So when we depart also and when we are living also, if we can remember God, sure we'll attain him. Purvam api antakale cha. Okay, so while learning the grammar, while having the possessions, while doing our duties, never forgetting God, that's what he's telling us to do. Bhaja Govindam. The term bhaj means worship. It does not mean only a ritualistic routine. It's not just a mechanical chanting of some sacred mantras. It really means seeking our identity with Lord. That is a true bhajan. That is a true seva. Sure, the services, the chanting, taking the flowers, offering the flowers, sure, they all help. But again, remember, those are only the means. I wouldn't mind saying those are religious drills. Drills are needed, but do we want to only end our journey at the drill? No. So true bhajan is a total subjective surrender. Okay, now you will say, what is subjective? Everything else is objective. Only thing subjective is ourself. Subjective surrender in love and devotion at the altar of Lord is called bhajan. We learned in Narad Bhakti Sutra different ways we can do it. This bhajan can be done, but we got to look at, am I reaching there where these great rishis are taking me? We can do the Shravanam, listening to the glories of Lord. When we are listening, are we surrendering or not? When we are doing kirtan, singing the glory of Lord, are we surrendering our subjective self or not? Smarnam, when we are thinking about God, His nature, His beauty. When we are doing the Pad Seva, we say, no, I love to do the Pad Seva. I like to have the feet of my Guru in my altar. Are we adoring the feet of Lord in the spirit of becoming one or not? Just like they just drop the coconut water, after breaking the coconut, just becomes one. It just pours into the feet of Lord. Are we doing that or not? Archanam. We are doing the Archana with the help of certain mantras, Vedic hymns. Worshipping the God. Are we remembering God or are we just doing a drill? Vandanam. These are all terms we learned in the previous scripture. Dasyam. Can I really say that I am a Lord's servant? Sakhyam. Atmanivedanam. Those are all different ways we can really do the bhajan, worship. But remember, in the essence, in all worships is service, seva. Without seva, there is no bhajan. Okay? Because seva is the one which makes us humble. Seva is the one which makes us surrender. Ishwar seva is Ishwar bhajanam, no doubt. But at the same time, Lord Krishna said, I am everywhere. Jana seva also. Janardhan seva, he used the word. He himself is called Janardhan. So when we study something like this, when we call ourselves that we are the students of spirituality, we got to look at it. All these qualities are coming in us or not. Before we end, I'm going to go a little bit more next week when we start from this verse. But remember, according to Shankara Acharya, Brahm can be understood at two levels. Nirgun Brahm and Sagun Brahm. Because sometimes people think, no, he only talked about the Nirgun Brahm because he was a Advaita philosopher. But no, he talked about the Nirgun Brahm and Sagun Brahm both. Nirgun Brahm is which is formless, beyond comprehension. Sagun Brahm is whenever he talks about the characteristics which are attributed to it, when it's called a Ishwar, that is a Sagun Brahm. Sometimes he describes Brahm as a Satachit Anand, the truth, the consciousness, the bliss. Sagun Brahm is the one When we have the deities, Shiv and the Vishnu, those are the examples of Saguna Brahma. Okay, so do not get confused with any of this. Just remember that he talked about both. Otherwise, he wouldn't be talking about this bhaj over here. Bhajan, this devotional part. Okay, so do not stay just fixated in one term. Goal over here is to become one with Lord, our beloved. So next week we will start from this verse number first again. But today I would like Poonam to sing number 1 and number 2 also. Number 2 is Mood Jahi Dhan Agam Trishna Naam Kuru Sad Buddhi Manasihi Vi Trishna Naam Yat Lab Se Nij Karam Upatam Vitam Ten Vinodye Chitam. Then Bhaj Govindam, Bhaj Govindam. So she is going to sing these two, but we will finish on the verse number 1 also next time when we start, and then we'll look at verse number 2. But today just listen to how beautifully she is going to sing, and if you can sing with her, I mean on Zoom we all cannot sing, otherwise it's just too much echo, but sing on your own, try to learn and practice. But let me end the class with Purnamadala. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaye Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti 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 Om.
Thank you, Hersh.
Okay, Puna.
Bhaj Govindam, Bhaj Govindam, Bhaj Govindam, Bhaj Govindam, Govindam Bhaj Mudhamate, Bhaj Govindam, Bhaj Govindam, Bhaj Govindam, Bhaj Govindam, Govindam Bhaj Mudhamate. Samprapte samhite kale, Samprapte samhite kale, Nahi nahi rakshati dukran karane, Nahi nahi rakshati dukran karane. Bhaj Govindam, Bhaj Govindam, Bhaj Govindam, Bhaj Govindam, Govindam Bhaj Mudhamate. Mood Jahayahi Danagam Trishna, Mood Jahehi Danagam Trishnam, Kuru Sadbuddhi Manasi Vitrishnam, Kuru Sadbuddhim Mansi Vitrishnam, Yalahabhase Nij Karmopatam, Yalahabhase Nij Karmopatam, Vittam Tena Vinodhaya Chetam, Vittam Tena Vinodhaya Chetam. Bhaj Govindam, Bhaj Govindam, Bhaj Govindam, Bhaj Govindam, Govindam bhaj moodhamate. Thank you, Hershji. Few words I did